I'm Marty Dunn. I'm the Dean of the College of Engineering, Design, and Computing at CU Denver. And sort of my job tonight is to serve as the moderator for the discussion. And so it's my great pleasure to welcome you to CU Denver, to welcome you to our first campus-wide panel discussion on a really important and exciting topic. It's really sort of around advanced degrees in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. So the structure a little bit tonight kind of is going to go something like this. You know, we've spent some time socializing, we fed you, now we're going to entertain you, or I'll say they're going to entertain you, our distinguished group here. And I'll spend a few minutes introducing them and kind of teeing up the conversation. And then I'm just going to moderate kind of a conversation around a series of questions that many of our students have put together. And then we'll open it up to the audience, kind of to ask questions and engage with the group as well. So one of the things that I'm really excited about and pleased by is sort of the impetus for tonight's conversation kind of has originated with our students. And kind of many of our graduate students, they're working hard, they're taking courses, they're doing research, they're talking and engaging with their professors. And I think they've got a pretty good idea, and they see what the lifestyle of a professor looks like. And they've been asking themselves, and they've been asking our faculty, you know, what else is there? Right? And so I think that turns out to be a really fantastic question that kind of our students and some of our faculty got together and said, well, let's think about how we could answer that question. And rather than having a bunch of professors kind of tell our students what the answer to that question is, we'll get some real personal experience kind of from folks that have a wide range of perspectives on kind of what one does, what one can do, kind of with an advanced degree in STEM fields. So these are really important and kind of interesting questions right now, kind of at a time in our society where there's a lot of questions about higher education in general, the value of higher education. We see things like for-profit institutions creating really interesting and innovative new programs, things like coding camps, companies, and we're told are hiring folks based on kind of assessments rather than the traditional, you know, degree or resume that someone may come to them with. And so all of these things are really challenging. They're challenging us, but they're challenging how kind of as a society, as a country, we think about higher education. At the same time, we know kind of around the world, the demand and the desire to sort of grow economies and increase the quality of life globally is largely driven kind of by STEM and by education. And we see, and in my own personal experience, kind of spending 5 years kind of working abroad, and I see the higher ed and especially the graduate education system in the US is still the gold standard around the world. And so despite some of these kind of disruptive challenges, you know, we're really at an important and exciting time. And just an anecdote, interestingly, from last night, I had dinner with a colleague from Israel who's visiting here. And he was asking me kind of a little bit the question that I just alluded to. He said, are companies now starting to hire people kind of not wanting or worried about degrees? And you know, we talked about kind of a little bit, kind of how we see a little bit kind of that. And Israel is quite famous and, you know, for their startup culture and so forth. And, you know, and his message to me was, you know, we see especially startups, I mean, they are really interested in skills and mindsets of folks and much less interested, you know, in what's, you know, what's on their transcript and their degrees and so forth. So I think kind of this discussion tonight kind of is especially relevant. So again, I'm really proud of our students and really appreciate our faculty kind of for kind of helping them kind of get to where we are tonight and bring together a group of kind of fantastic experts that have different and diverse experiences in industry and in government to share some of their perspectives with us tonight on some of these questions. And so I want to spend a couple minutes kind of introducing the group here, And then I'll kick things off by sort of asking a broad question, and they'll all have the opportunity to share, their perspectives with you. And one of the things that I also am quite excited and I think is quite, exciting about tonight is there are no right or wrong answers. Okay. We're obviously, or me and my colleagues at the university, we're in the business of higher education and stuff. But some of these questions, there are no right or wrong answers, and it's the personal perspectives of each of you that are most interesting to us. And so we're excited to kind of hear and explore some of this with you. So I'm going to kind of start on your left and work my way. And so first I want to introduce to you Dr. Angie Hager. And Angie is a staff engineer with the City and County of Denver Public Works. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering from the Colorado School of Mines. And I'm very proud that she's one of our alums, kind of holding master's and PhD degrees in civil and structural engineering from the University of Colorado at Denver. She's worked at the City and County of Denver for over 15 years, specializes in asset management for both the bridge and the street maintenance sections, and oversees implementation of asset management efforts encompassing everything from curb and gutter, pedestrian curb ramps, streets, alleys, bridges, traffic signals, signs. I think the more I read, I might get you in trouble here, and you'll get more questions than you want. All the way to stormwater and wastewater infrastructure. So join me in welcoming Angie.
Thank you.
Okay. Kind of seated next to kind of Angie is Dr. Rasul Kadim. He's the founder and president of MedInventive. It's an engineering and design firm in the medical device field with engineers from across the U.S. and also in South America. Dr. Kadim holds a bachelor degree in electrical engineering from Sharif University of Technology in Tehran, Iran, and master's and PhD degrees in electrical engineering from Stanford University. He specializes in magnetic resonance imaging, and he joined a medical device startup in the Bay Area, kind of originally, and in 2003 moved to Colorado to work for Medtronic, which is, as many of you know, one of the largest global companies in the medical device sector. For the last 9 years, he's been focused on growing and establishing MedInventive along with his business partner and wife, Mina. So join me in welcoming kind of Dr. Kadim. Continuing in my direction is Dr. Praj Kulkarni. He's the director of Walls Practice and Inflection IT. Dr. Kulkarni graduated in 2003 from Penn State University with degrees in electrical engineering and physics, and then completed his PhD in applied physics in 2009 at Stanford University, where he specialized in space plasma physics. Dr. Kulkarni worked as a science and technology policy fellow at the Environmental Protection Agency, that in the enterprise software industry. So join me in welcoming Praj. Seated next to Praj is Dr. Peter Stoltz, who is Vice President of Computational Beam and Plasma Physics at the TechX Corporation. He received his Bachelor of Arts in Physics from the University of California in Berkeley, and then his PhD in Physics from a little school down the road, the University of Colorado in Boulder, in the kind of mid-90s.
The wrong one.
He's a postdoctoral researcher in computational beam physics, the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab, and then kind of a postdoctoral research working on large-scale modeling of X-ray sources at Sandia National Laboratories, kind of in 1998 to 2000. In 2000, he joined the TechX Corporation, which is a company that specializes in scientific computing. His research interests include computer modeling of high-power microwave sources, compact accelerating structures, and industrial plasmas. So please join me in welcoming Peter. And right next to me is Dr. Eric Tan. And Eric is a senior research engineer at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Dr. Tan earned his bachelor's and master's and PhD degrees in chemical engineering from the University of Akron. Dr. Tan has over 10 years of industrial experience in the design and development of engineered nanostructural materials, industrial fuel processing technology, hydrogen production processes, and commercial fuel cell systems. His research interests include sustainable process design, biofuels, renewable chemicals, the carbon economy, and sustainability. He's currently the senior biorefinery and sustainability analyst at the National Renewable Energy Lab, kind of also down another street here in Golden. So please join me in welcoming Eric. So we're going to kick off our discussion, and you'll be grateful, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to kind of ask a few prepared questions of our panelists, and then we'll transition to questions for the audience. So as we get going, feed off of what you hear and kind of think of questions, that you might want to ask kind of here in another half hour, 45 minutes or so. So I'm going to start kind of with Angie, if it's okay, and ask each of you kind of to respond and kind of talk to the audience kind of with regard to the following question, which is very kind of simple. Why did you choose to do a PhD, and how has it affected your career?
All right. Well, thank you for the question. And while it seems like a simple question, it's not a simple answer. When I first started my PhD study, it wasn't something I had ever intended to do. It was something that my advisor through my master's program really saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And he really prompted me and said, that there was, that it was something that was achievable for me and something that he saw that would be helpful for me in the future. And so with that forethought, I went ahead and got started not knowing where it would lead me. And, 4 long years later, it was completed. And it wasn't an easy journey by any means. But, in terms of why did I choose it, I chose it because someone saw something in me that I didn't see in myself and had a belief in me that at the time I really didn't even know that I had in myself. In terms of how has it benefited me in my career, in terms of the benefits, I could have the position I have today without a PhD. I don't have to have the credentials of a PhD to be in the position I have today. But that being said, the lessons that I learned through the research project, through the tenacity, the endurance, the research role of my PhD, I think it really shaped and molded my mind. It shaped and molded me, and I don't think I would be in the position I'm at today without that process, without having gone through that research.
Fantastic, thank you. Rasul.
So I chose PhD because I would say more culturally and from childhood, this is what I wanted to do. This is what we grew up with. That hey, you need to finish what you started. Basically, you don't go all the way to the end. So if I think back, from early on in my like junior high and high school, I knew I wanted to do PhD. So that's a drive that I had. And so the path that I chose was engineering, was also my passion. I was good at math, and I couldn't see myself doing anything else. So and it was reinforced always by I would say teachers, grades that I got. I felt that okay, yeah, it's something that I love, and still I do. I mean, I'm an engineer by heart, and that's how I picked it. And then how it helped me is basically what Angie said is right. The tenacity part. I had parts in my research that I had no way how to find a solution for. My advisor didn't know. No one knew. So basically, we had to find a way to solve it. So that part, and you never give up. That part basically taught me that in my career also I could use that. Besides, in my opinion, PhD opened up the getting into door of a company like Medtronic. I don't know if I didn't have PhD, I had a chance. Maybe I did, I don't know. But basically that helped. And still to date, I think in my work, having PhD is helping me when I talk to clients, customers, that background and basically them knowing that background, it adds, right or wrong, it adds some credence to what you're saying. But of course, you have to build up on top of that.
Fantastic. Raj, same
Yep,
question.
thank you. So I was also interested in science and engineering and math most of my younger life. I entered college and I continued down that path. I realized I really enjoyed the academic life and I thought I wanted to be an academic. And so that's what I decided to do. I was in engineering and physics and I ended up, for my graduate degree, splitting that and doing applied physics. And I really loved the experience of being in grad school. Turns out my initial beliefs were wrong and I didn't want to be an academic full time. But I've still found it very beneficial. I think career is a tricky word. In my day job, if you will, I think it adds some credibility, but I'm not sure it's necessarily helped me progress in that. But I did a prestigious fellowship in Washington, D.C., for which a PhD is required. I have a lot of public policy interests, for which a PhD adds credibility, and I'm able to do things like write essays and whatnot that I'm able to move in a world and engage in conversations that a PhD has helped. And I will definitely echo what Angie and Rasul said, the intellectual tenacity and the skills and the knack you develop to doggedly pursue a problem. A PhD is very helpful in cultivating that. All of you probably have that to a certain degree, but a PhD will make it much stronger.
Great, thank you. Peter.
The question is exactly why we got PhD, is that right?
The specific question, why did you choose to do a PhD?
Mm-hmm.
And how has it benefited you in your career? I
Right.
guess there's an assumption that you chose.
Yeah, right. No, I did choose. It's true. Yeah, so I got a degree in physics, not engineering. I don't know if there's any physicists out there. No, zero.
I know a couple.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, good. All right. So I feel like maybe physics is a little bit different because at least in my case, I got a bachelor's degree and really did not know what to do at that point. So yeah, graduate school was just kind of a way, it was the default choice for me. So yeah, that was why, is just I was enjoying physics and I didn't know what else to do at the time, so I went to graduate school. And how has it benefited me? Well, that one I can actually answer. In my particular field of study, what getting a PhD helped me understand was what were the limits of what people knew and understood about my field. So my field is plasma physics. Yeah, and in that case, right, it was getting a PhD let me learn and understand what did people already know, what were kind of the frontiers, what were the things people definitely did not know, and that's really served me well. So I would say that's like the main,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Great. Eric.
Okay, so I got my PhD in 1997, so it's been a long time. So I have to try to remember why I did that. Okay, one reason actually is that I asked my father at that time, I said, should I go for PhD? He said, if you have a PhD, it will be easier for you to get a loan from the bank. The reason I said it, he said it was because I'm from Singapore. So I was born in Malaysia and grew up in Singapore and Malaysia. So in that society, PhD weighed a lot. Okay, this is just one reason. But the true reason actually is because, like Rasul and others, I was already very interested in science and research. When I was in high school, I had fantastic science teacher and who can explain the scientific concepts very clearly, who make the science more fun. And I recall somebody said that the great teacher is the one that inspires you. So I guess I was inspired. And also I went to a very good school, and the school always invite alumni from and this alumni normally have a PhD in science or engineering. So for example, one alumni talked about the subatomic particles. He was in that kind of field. So at one point, I was so inspired by that. I want to be a physicist, and fortunately, not. And also my organic chemistry at that time mentioned that polymer composite is a good research area. So at that time, actually, before I graduated, finished my high school, I have already decided that one day I will do the research in this area. And that's why I chose University of Akron, because they have one of the best programs in the world. Akron is a capital city of polymer or rubber. And fortunately or unfortunately, before I start my graduate program, my thesis advisors convinced me to join his group. So my PhD is actually in the heterogeneous catalysis research. Ironically, right now he is the department head of the polymer science. So, and how the degree helped me? Actually a lot. It opened a lot of opportunities for me. And so that I have an opportunity to work for good companies. For example, I do research in the Lambda-Benz Mercedes headquarters in Stuttgart, also company in Netherlands. And I also work with, and now I work for the national lab. So without a PhD, I will not have this kind of opportunity. And also, in addition to the organization, also research areas. I had the opportunity to work for the nanotechnology type of research, and then later on hydrogen economy, and then bioeconomy, and now circular economy. So, yeah.
Well, fantastic. I feel I've already kind of learned so much, and we're just getting started. So for the rest of and I'm gonna kind of ask a question, and I have a handful of questions here that our students have kind of poured through and kind of put together, things they're interested in. And I'm gonna let you jump in and answer them. And if you don't, then I'm gonna start picking on you. So I think the first one kind of picks up kind of on the comment kind of that Angie kind of started, and I think you heard a little bit of it reflected through everybody's answer about, sort of how it shaped, the PhD shaped kind of hers and their perspectives going forward. And the question kind of is, all of these folks are kind of at various kind of senior level kind of positions now and interact with job candidates and so forth. And so when you see a candidate who has an advanced degree, does that automatically kind of trigger something in your mind or tell you something about their knowledge, their skills, their mindsets that's different than somebody kind of just with a bachelor's degree, or someone kind of with, say, a bachelor's degree that has a lot of experience?
So I would say when you see a candidate with an advanced degree, it speaks to that tenacity that we spoke of earlier, that determination, because in everyone's PhD process, in everyone's research process, you come across so many roadblocks. You come across, there's hurdles, there's so many different challenges that we face. And to have that determination, to have that fortitude, to continue on through that is a strength of character that is in that person. You don't necessarily know that with years of experience. Years of experience, you can establish that someone knows about that industry, but you don't know the nature of the character of that person, if they have the tenacity to stick with a problem to see it through.
So for me, I would say it's a mix. If I see PhD next to a candidate name and I've seen it, it piques my interest, that's for sure. I would then look further down. In our industry, PhD is important, but so is experience in industry. And the way our work is, and a lot of times we need a very specialized expertise. So I'm looking for people who have experience in that particular area. So I personally, right now at this time for our company, more value experience. Having PhD is a plus, but it's not the only thing that I look for it. experience in a field that is relevant, and of course in the job, in the company, as you all know, personality and hardworking is some traits that also, regardless of PhD or not PhD, is important. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, to just echo some of that, short answer is it definitely piques my interest. It builds a sense of a connection because especially in my field, I don't see many PhDs. That said, it depends on whether you're hiring for a specific particular role or a role that requires very specific skills, like Rasul said, or general skills. I do a lot of customer work. That is 80% of my work, 90% of my work. So a PhD may be helpful in that. I think what I would say to commend all the grad students in here, a skill you may not know you have, which you do is public speaking and presenting, which is a skill you develop which many people don't have the opportunity to develop. But that said, they may not be as strong in certain general skills, sales, customer management, so on and so forth. So that was a purposeful non-answer.
And
thank you.
writing, by the way.
Yes,
Writing
writing is critical.
is something that we do a lot of reports we have to do. It makes a big difference, someone who could write, and PhD, of course,
Yeah.
you have to write. So.
Now, that's fantastic, and I think this kind of discourse is kind of what we're kind of hoping for. As you hear each other kind of say something and react to it, feel free. And I'm going to just kind of take my cue from you when people aren't jumping up to the mic. I'm going to move on to the next question. So I'll do that now. So an advanced degree, and in particular a PhD, involves a deep dive into a topic, that you gain a level of expertise, kind of that's often we say it's greater than anybody in the world, kind of in your particular topic, and you advance human knowledge kind of in new ways and in new dimensions. While you're doing this, you develop a lot of skills, and each field is a little bit different. Those skills could be softer skills, hopefully, like public speaking, like writing, like, various communication skills. But it could be kind of computer programming, data analysis, in-depth theoretical understanding, many various elements. So with that sort of said, what's your sense of what's been most valuable to you as you've advanced in your career? I would say that knowledge around the particular topic that you studied, kind of, or the broader skills that you picked up in doing so. And it may not be an either or. So folks want to comment on that? Eric?
I can start first. First of all, I think both are important. Of course, if you have a PhD, you got to be an expert in your area, that's for sure. And then other skills, like Rasul mentioned, writing skills is very important. And because you have experience in writing your dissertation or thesis, and hopefully you also publish some journal articles before you graduate. And this is a very important skills if you want to go the R&D route, for sure. Especially if you have to apply fundings, research grant, writing skills is very important. In addition to that, presentation skills. As a student, you probably have chance to present your paper or research work at conferences. And if you can present your result effectively, this skill can also be translated in the future. If you want to become an entrepreneur, start up your own company, you can effectively present your idea to the potential funding agencies or the sponsor. So, of course, there are many other skills. Yeah.
I could talk about two things that happened while I was in physics graduate school. One was that in my particular field, I was doing computer simulation, so I learned computer programming, and I think unquestionably that has been the kind of the byproduct that has been the most beneficial to me. I kind of feel like I should be somehow making more money than I am right now. Yeah, so that's kind of an ancillary skill that I learned along the way to getting my PhD. But also, I think a couple people have said it, but maybe a different way to say it. I learned to network, and that was probably, I would say that was the number one soft skill that I learned in graduate school. Yeah, you end up meeting a lot of people over the course of whatever, 6, 7 years, whatever. And just, you never know who among those people is going to be important later on. So yeah, networking was probably the top one of those skills.
And to add to that, a dimension that I can see that benefits is the analytical skills, problem solving. In our industry, and every day you have problems that you need to solve. You're supposed to solve problems. So having skill set so that methodically you could analyze situations, separate maybe facts or data from assumptions, and try to build up, whatever gap you have in your whatever problem you're solving. That's something that PhD program could help, because unlike industry that sometimes you're in the very hard deadlines, maybe in the research program, you have longer timelines, 6 months, a year, 2 years, however, to finish a problem. So that gives opportunity to develop the skill set that you need without shortcutting to find the solution. So that's an activity or a skill set that I think is valuable.
In academia, and especially your bachelor's degree, as you're going through your coursework, you're handed the problem and asked to solve it. And the biggest thing I've found in industry is that you're not handed the problem, and the biggest thing you have to do is to define your problem. And that's one of the things that going through graduate work helps you to do, is to define the problem that you need to solve. And you need to start with defining that problem before you can start to address how to solve that problem. And so I think that's one of the big jumps from your bachelor's program to more advanced degrees, is starting to look at those problems a little bit more with the lens open, and to start to analyze what is the problem itself before you can start to address it.
Wonderful. So the next question I want to ask, and I'm delighted we have a diverse kind of range of industries and perspectives here, but if you could, kind of within your sort of sphere of knowledge, talk about kind of how do you categorize kind of industry positions for PhD holders? What would a PhD holder do in your industry? Is it R&D? Is it kind of tee you up for sales, or what?
In my industry, let's broadly say that is enterprise software, which is a fancy way of saying you're making software for big companies, which is very different than, the latest, coolest game on your iPhone. There are security requirements, there are deployment requirements. How do you roll this out to 1,000 tablets at once, so on and so forth. The latest buzzword in the industry is data science, machine learning. So PhDs who enter these enterprise software fields tend to go into those types of positions. From that, it is very straightforward to go into other roles: product management, product marketing, sales, so on and so forth. I took the somewhat different route where I got to that same end goal, even though I had the initial technical skills, but I purposefully wanted a job that didn't require super technical skills because I wanted to do customer work. I like being around people, so I ended up being a solution architect. So just something to think about. You have a set of skills, and you can take them in many directions, and you shouldn't necessarily think of it as a loss. No matter what my father might tell me, that you don't use your skills on a daily basis, or you're not using your PhD at your first job. That's okay. There are many benefits to graduate school, personal and professional, and you shouldn't forget both sides of the coin, I think. Even though I don't do plasma physics, I really enjoyed grad school, and yeah, so.
Yeah, R&D positions, I would say for positions that are more open to PhDs are, a CTO level, VP of engineering, those things, having PhD definitely helps. Research parts, in terms of, a lot of work that at least we do in our industry is clinical research. So basically we have to collaborate with physicians. So having PhD and being there, that helps again for publications that you do, or any IRB, any permissions that you can get, for to research something in the hospital, to conduct an experiment, things like that. But mostly on the technical side, and definitely as Praj is saying, is that's not the only way. You could open up, your career to anywhere, any direction you want to go.
One thing I want to point out is that depending on the company and depending on what kind of PhD, for example, if you are engineering, sometimes with or without PhD, the difference is not that big. But if you are, there's a chemist, physicist, or biologist, then PhD make a huge difference. For example, I once worked for big corporations. Chemist, if you only up to a master degree, a lot of time, you only do some lab work. Only those at the PhD are called scientists, and you are allowed to do more advanced research work. So just for your information.
Kind of related question a little bit, just kind of following up on that. Comparing to the extent you can, kind of industry, government, and academia, can you say a little bit about your thoughts about the similarities and differences in the environment and things like bureaucracy, politics, and so forth within each?
Very good.
So I guess I have experience in all three. I was VPA for a couple of years. I now work in industry. So there are many ways you could look at it, also small versus big. The somewhat generic answer is, especially academia, I think, is more different in the sense, when you think of the history of the academy and what its purpose is, research almost by definition is a little more open-ended. And you can take, a couple of years to realize, hey, this problem can't be solved. And notwithstanding certain larger companies who have a lot of money and can devote more time to maybe basic research or those risky endeavors, in my company, if we have a quarter of bad sales, that affects my salary. So there's a much shorter time frame on which you can explore and engage in intellectual exploration. And I would say government is similar in industry to that, especially you're beholden to taxpayers, you have budgets that can be variable, so on and so forth.
Yeah, in terms of the differences between academia, startup, and big company, I personally, firsthand, I had few cultural shocks, I would say. So from academia, everyone was very disciplined, very civilized, academic conversations, everyone, there was no emotions involved. And then I joined a startup. The culture of that startup that I was there, it was hard, intense, and people fight against each other. They basically, they leave the meeting, they, slam on the table. That doesn't work. To me, that was the biggest shock. How different is that what industry is? Then after 4 years, I joined a big company. I remember this shock. The first couple of days, I talked to my boss, and what a topic. And he said, okay, I'll schedule a meeting to talk about that. I said, what do you mean schedule a meeting? It's our Outlook. We, in our startup, we're never using Outlook because everyone was open. We had an open space, everyone talking to everyone, all at the same time. You had to use Outlook to schedule a meeting to finish a conversation that you just had. So that was okay. That went back to this structured kind of interactions. So culture shock, be ready to basically be exposed to quite opposite directions there.
Interesting. Wonderful. Yeah, Eric.
Just to add something. So I never worked in the academia, so I have no comment on that. But industry, essentially everything point out to the what are your products and who are your customers. So I just want to summarize two things. So if you work for the also industry, essentially you can divide it into profit and non-profit. So for the profit one, essentially you have to make your customer happy. And for the non-profit one, you have to make your boss happy. Yeah.
I think hitting on Praj's point earlier that, working in government, you do have this beholden to the taxpayers that you don't have the amount of, I guess, flexibility to spend excessive amounts of time researching and collaborating and trying to figure out the best solution. That at the end of the day, we have to get things done, and the tax holders are going to behold us to that. One of the great aspects of academia was just that collaborative effort. I was in a committee where we had a bunch of graduate students doing different sustainable design engineering projects, and we would get together every other week and collaborate on our projects. And we all had different projects, but we overlapped. And to get together and have that accountability, but to also brainstorm with each other was a neat opportunity, and to have the flexibility to collaborate openly without kind of, I mean, yes, you have your pressures and your deadlines and your faculty have that accountability for you, but to have that openness to think freely and to kind of really build on each other is a great institute in academia.
Is anyone thinking about working at a national lab? Is that yeah. I'll just briefly comment on kind of the bureaucracy at that. So I worked at Sandia. Eric, you work at a national lab right now, but Sandia is a secure, they work on weapons type stuff. So the bureaucracy is really high, and I'll tell you for sure that was one of the reasons I left. It's just not fun after a while, that level of bureaucracy. So
Additionally, you have a lot of reports to write. Plus,
SOP.
you have no free coffee.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, you're getting the real scoop there. Yeah. So offline, I'll encourage the students. You've heard a little bit of reflection. You can talk to the faculty kind of directly about what's a faculty meeting like here. So this panel was initiated kind of at the request of the students, and the students kind of had many questions about entrepreneurship. And we had a kind of really interesting discussion. We kind of started talking about that. I had the opportunity to have dinner kind of with the group here. And so I wanted to ask you to share some of kind of what we talked about and kind of beyond that. How do you think about, what is your kind of perspective, on advanced degrees and entrepreneurship? Useful, not useful, et cetera?
So entrepreneurship is a very big idea. So if you would like, and it also, do you want to join a startup or do you want to do your own startup? But so let's say you figured all of that out. If you want to do something in your technical field, then having the degree will be immensely useful. It may not be if you're doing something not in your technical field. So, and I think a lot of times you think of entrepreneurship as a product company or building a product that you're kind of going to sell. I'm in a professional services startup-ish company, where it's a very successful services company, but it's a different business model, a different skill set in how do you build a sales pipeline and how do you manage relationships with your various partners and so on and so forth. So, it's very vague. Will a technical degree help you in entrepreneurship? It really depends. It can be immensely helpful, but it may not be as well.
Yeah, that is very true. It might help in the beginning. The reason to go to start a startup is if you want to be. The good reason would be to be passionate about something to go for it, right? The odds of if you go for making money, the odds are stacked against you. But if you're passionate about it and you enjoy the ride, that should be the reason. But I can tell you that if you're trying to raise money, maybe having PhD on board would help. Like if a founder is a PhD, I was part of a company, not related to medical stuff, but I remember, the founder was always, when he was raising money, was saying, "Oh, we have a PhD on board." Jokingly or not jokingly, at least that basically breaks the ice actually in meetings. Yeah, it could be either way. So if really if the passion is there, that should be the reason to do it. Yeah.
I haven't talked much about the company where I work. It's called TechX. It's in Boulder, and I don't know about your company, Praj, but it might be different than the other entrepreneurial companies here because we work on what's called SBIR and STTR. Those are acronyms: Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Research. Do you all do any?
SBIR.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, but so my comment's a little bit specific to that, but an advanced degree is critical there because I think when you apply for these grants specifically to that program, these are federally funded programs, these SBIR and STTR. Yeah, they're definitely looking for a PhD, I think, for those.
So I'm quite nervous about the next question, because I think our faculty should be a bit nervous about this as well. I think you're going to get a to-do list here. The next question, really, I am excited that kind of students are thinking about this. We're thinking about it, but as a university, what can we do to make an advanced degree, especially a STEM degree, more valuable, more relevant? Kind of what can we kind of do vis-a-vis our experiences that kind of we provide and engage kind of with our students in to help them sort of be more successful and so forth. And that, I think, just to kind of kick ideas around. Do we teach too many courses, not enough courses? Do we need to get people outside of kind of the lab and into the real world? Where would you suggest we go kind of with that?
Yeah, I start with that. If you
Like I said, I'm very nervous.
Yeah. So during summertime, I would say if you could have incentives or some mandatory internship outside university, that is extremely helpful. I personally had options for internship outside or continuing my work in cool research projects, and I picked mostly research projects on university. That was for me in my few years at grad school. I never went for summer internship outside because I was not expected to, and professors love when the students say, I want to stay here and do some research because a couple of papers come out of it and it's the cheapest kind of way for them. So I would say if you can institute, I don't know, the program here is the kind of, I don't want to call it forcing, but incentivizing for internship outside. So they get more experience and making it to be a different company. So after 4 years, however many years it takes, you have experience in different companies. That would be valuable.
Yeah, I agree. I have 3 things in mind. Number one is that I think students and the professors need to try to collaborate with industries. Actually, nowadays, there are, at least in my field, bioenergy has a lot of opportunity. For example, the recent FOA, the funding opportunities all require you to partner with the university and also an industry. So national lab, university, and industries. So to have a joint proposals. So because if you collaborate with the industry, then most of your research work are more relevant to the current industry's things. Second thing is, I think it's good if the department will have some special classes that are taught by the subject expert outside of the universities, and this can be an elective class, and it also can be it's beneficial to students, and students not just from your own department but also from other departments can also benefit from it. And the third thing is I encourage students to try to apply for internships because like in NREL, a lot of times all these interns eventually also become the permanent staff there.
Just to echo what's been said about internships, I have to definitely echo those same sentiments. So a little bit about my background. When I started my master's degree, I got on board with a internship program that the University of Colorado Denver had with the city and county of Denver. And at that time, Dr. Renz and I would go out in the field and do bridge inspections side by side. And I remember drawing shear and moment diagrams in the air as we're doing these inspections. And so one, that connection of the university to the real life, to the rest of to the physical, what's going on in industry, in government, and having that connection. So that internship program is still in place today. We've had interns for over 20 years, and now from the city standpoint, I help with managing that program, and it's helpful from the city's standpoint to be able to utilize the knowledge base that these students bring. And we've had a number of research projects and stuff that have originated from different city projects, different bridge studies and stuff like that. So that collaboration has been huge. And it's also, it's obviously formed my career. So further about that note, I think having that connection, being able to get down into a culvert with a student and sit there and draw shear and moment diagrams in the air, to be able to get down at that level and have that level of connection is important as well too.
Some people like to kind of use an analogy to sports and sort of see an advanced degree as sort of providing you sort of broad and somewhat general athletic training that then you can go and attack a number of kind of sports with to some degree. I don't know if that's the right analogy kind of or not, but along those lines, how transferable do you see kind of your knowledge, skills, and attitudes that were had during your advanced degree studies being transferable kind of as you've moved through your career to other areas?
When people apply for jobs at my company, if they don't have a plasma physics background, that's actually okay. That's actually, no problem with that. And I'm more interested in how they solve problems and how they think about problems. And so I would say, sure, transferable. I would even lower myself to take an electrical engineer, Mark. So, yeah, no, I do. I think it's transferable for sure, at least in my field.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, knowledge is, the skill set is transferable to whatever you want to do, and I've seen that in action. At the analogy, I agree with the analogy. Actually, it's a good one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add a little bit, I think technical skill you can always learn, but one important thing is the personal skills and how you deal with people, and are you resourceful. These are something that we are actually looking for. Yeah. People that are resourceful. Yeah.
So one of the, and I think all of my faculty colleagues would probably agree with that, one of the great things about a career as a PhD in academia is that we have tremendous flexibility. I mean, we can follow our intellect in many directions. Sort of the only constraint on that to some degree is that we've got to find a way to resource those kind of pursuits and support students and, fund our labs and so forth. Kind of within your kind of industries and in your positions, can you say a little bit about the flexibility you have in engaging kind of in various projects and so forth?
I have created that flexibility for myself. So, selfishly, as head of the company, I usually keep some interesting projects to myself, in a sense that, and of course, there are some deadlines and some commitments we have to do, and we have a team that is working on. But the advice that always they give you is that if you're managing something, try to detach yourself from technical aspects. But I could never do that. I always have my hand into technical part too. So in order to basically thrive intellectually, I always keep some parts of the projects more intimately involved. So in a sense, I've fortunate enough to create that flexibility. But many people in industry, they might not have it. They might have the mandate project that is done this way. This is the requirement that you need to do. These are the boundaries that you need to work on. So I don't know about government or other industries.
No, just chiming in from my perspective. You would think in government that you're kind of regimented in terms of what your tasks are and stuff like that. And there's a saying that, if the position you want doesn't exist, to create it, to, just become. And, truth be told, when I started my PhD studies, the research topic that I wanted to study, the initial topic that I proposed, was actually what I'm professionally doing now. And this Office of Asset Management was just formed 6 months ago. And so I guess maybe it speaks to that tenacity that maybe, and this is just coming to me now, that maybe I didn't give up on that thought, that concept, and maybe that passion has still been within me, and that must exude forth, and that through the tenacity, through continuing those same efforts forward, that even in government, you can create those positions, those opportunities for yourself. It may take time, and it, sometimes, especially creating a new office within government took a while, but, over time, it can happen. And just, if that position doesn't exist, you can create it, over time of telling the same story over and, telling the story to the decision makers that, why this needs to be in place. And again, it speaks to having the skill set of the presentation skills, the various skill sets that you learn through the PhD process, beyond the technical skills, but the networking and all those other soft skills speak to creating the position you want.
If you have a supportive boss, a supportive manager, and a reasonable company culture, which is surprisingly many, many companies. There are some very toxic work environments. They're not, you may be unfortunate to encounter one, but it's not the norm, I would say. And you're willing to be tenacious and put in the effort, and you know what you want. Yeah, and a lot of times you can create a position you want, because if you're demonstrating these skills and this interest, what it means is you're ultimately adding value to the company and to the customers.
Yeah, and I can just tell you, the company I work at's 30-ish people and has a budget in, a few-ish million annually. And we set aside a fraction of that for IR&D, what we would call internal research and development. And those projects are wide open, and you just pitch them, and you can propose whatever you like. So there's definitely flexibility, yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask a final question, and then we're going to open it to the audience. And the final, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's been really kind of wonderful to hear you talk kind of about your various experiences, and I have a sense of what the answer is going to be to this. But I'm going to start with Eric and move down and ask you to each answer sort of the following question. You all have kind of a lot of hindsight now. You've learned a lot, since you've done your graduate degrees. If you knew then what you know now, would you have still done it?
Absolutely, and even more so. The reason is because nowadays it's much easier to do research compared to the 20 years ago, for example. I remember at that time when I was in graduate school, I have to purchase, I think it's called Macintosh, Apple MacBook. It cost me over $3,000, but I was the only one in the lab has my own personal computer to do research. That's why I finished my PhD in 3 years. Seriously, because I can process my data. So it was a good investment. And also nowadays, the software, the internet is so much easier for you to do a literature search, organize your references, and so on. So absolutely, now is even better time. I will do it, definitely.
Great. Peter?
Yeah, I think I have no regrets looking back, so yep, solid yes.
That's good. Praj?
Yes, I would, I guess. But I guess I would offer a couple comments. caveat that I think you shouldn't evaluate your time in grad school only in terms of how it advances your career. And I have taken a really weird career path. I thought I wanted to work in public policy, which required me to get the PhD to get into the fellowship. Then I ended up being unemployed for several months. And then I got an entry-level job at a career fair, and I love my current job. And I'm in that same field right now, and I've done various enterprise software jobs. So I answer yes to being a PhD, even though, in all honesty, I definitely don't need it for my day job. So work is awesome, career is awesome, but grad school is also awesome. It's a great time of your life, and you should cherish that regardless of where it leads you ultimately in. You may not know. You may not know what you like. The second point is a phrase I heard from someone which I really like is, every move you make in your career will open some doors and close others, and there's nothing you can do about it. Going to grad school is opening some doors for you. Yes, it is closing some. You could sit at home and twiddle your thumbs. You're going to open some doors and close some. So again, to go back to my first point, I don't regret it. I'm glad I did it, but it's hard. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years? So try to, if you're enjoying it and you like research, grad school is awesome. Look at all the free food you got. You didn't even get free coffee.
And somehow during that time, without any phone and everything, during grad school, we could find where the free foods are. The big campus. I don't know about now.
The
And
real
always
skill.
the group were there. Oh, there's free pizza there. We could find out the way. No, for me it's a definitely yes. I would do the same, and mostly because the time at school is one of the best times in life. You don't have much responsibility. You just do. You basically drive towards your intellectual, curiosity, if you will. Basically. So I definitely would do it again.
I'm going to go with a yes as well. No, grad school is definitely one of those things where I think I learned more about myself through the process of doing my research and everything else, and through the hurdles I went through. It honestly was a tough time in my life. I was working full-time, going to school full-time, and started my family at the same time. So, we say, it's a fun, easygoing time of your life. I don't know that it was any of that, but it was, but I learned more about myself by going through the process, and I really feel like it developed a lot within me in terms of having the fortitude to continue on with research, to continue on with a problem, and even those stumbling blocks I just set forth. I mean, for a lot of people, if you're, halfway through your PhD and you find out you're pregnant, that a lot of people would stop there, and to continue on working full-time, going to school full-time with an infant at home, it was really learning that I could do that and pushing myself to do that, that really, that experience. And, even to this day, people, come to meet me, and that's the thing that they still remember about me, which, it's good.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we're going to shift gears a little bit here, and you've kind of got a lot of kind of good advice and heard a lot of good things, and now there may be some things you didn't hear and you want to hear from the group, and so we're going to open it up and allow folks to kind of ask questions, and I think you can ask questions as someone specific, or you can ask a general question, and I'll encourage my colleagues here to jump in.
Hello, everyone. My name is Puriya Hosseini. I'm from Electrical Engineering Department, and I thank everyone for being here. It's a really valuable input for all of us. And I have a question, which is I've heard from most of my friends who are sitting here. A lot of people in PhD or grad school have ideas about startups or stuff like that, but they don't know where to start with or how to connect their career, PhD, to that idea, or where to go to start networking, or even where to reach out for initial funding and stuff like that. If you have any insight about that, how to basically start with an idea for the startup or even a small company, where to get the funding, where to get the connection, stuff like that. Thank you.
Okay, great.
That's a big question. I think some schools even here may even have classes on that. A good tool I found, and I've never actually done a startup, but I've been involved in small companies, as I said, meetups. So networking is big, and there's a there are product management meetups in every city. Just that's what I attended for a while, and there's startup meetups, and they're really informal. You go and you chit chat, and I'm not going to say it'll happen in a week or a month, but it'll be a process, and through that, you'll learn how to refine your idea and present it and see where it's viable. On startups in general, I think there are 2 books I recommend that I like. One is called The Lean Startup. I forget who wrote it. And another very iconic one from Silicon Valley is Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. So I like both of them.
Yeah, I mean, one advice could be push for it, be realistic, don't give up equity too fast, too soon. So basically, if you think your idea is valuable and it's marketable, take your time. Take your time, find the right people. Find the right people. Going too fast prematurely, you might regret it later. And don't make yourself in a situation that basically either financially you're in a squeeze or something, so that you have to make decisions that you might not like.
But I'll put in another plug for the SBIR and STTR programs. I'd be interested, Rasul, how your company used it. Did they use it to start, or did they use it to supplement after they started?
Usually a supplement. Yeah.
Supplement.
Yeah.
So
Phase one, yeah.
I think most companies do it that way. You need a little bit of money to get your company going. Then you decide there's something you want to do, and you apply for an SBIR grant for that.
Yep.
My company was not founded that way. My company was started with SBIR money, but our founder had to work another job while he started the company. So, but yeah, if it's a great program, and there's lots of money out there in that program, so I recommend it as a way to get started.
Yeah. Also, I think SBA, is it right? Small Business Administration. Sometimes they also offer help, including proposal writing as well. Yeah.
Other questions?
So my name is Keith Jones. I'm on the staff here in the College of Engineering, Design, and Computing. And I once had a company tell me that they didn't like to hire PhDs because they thought they'd have to pay them more. And I just, my question is, for those of you, when you hire candidates, what's your impression of the market value of somebody who holds a PhD versus maybe somebody applying for that same position who has a master's or a bachelor's?
For me, a PhD with someone who has a bachelor with, let's say, 4 years of industry. So if you think about it, 3 years PhD, 3 years industry. I probably value the experience more. So that's my take.
My experience is that I was once hired by a company because of the research I was doing. So by hiring me, immediately they have that kind of capability in their company, for example, nanotechnology, for example. So they can start writing proposals in that area.
So we, as PhD students, we work in university for like 4 or 5 years as research assistants or stuff like that, right? How we can, like in terms of, and I know that there are like different levels when you are trying to get a career, right? With different salaries, right? Salary level. How we can basically have our research experience as a step to go reach a higher level of an industry position in terms of level or salary or stuff like that. Is it possible? And if it is, what should we take away from our research experience to be able to do that?
So to clarify, you're saying that you've done RA-ship, let's say, for 2 years in a lab.
Yes.
And you want to see how to make it visible in your resume
Yes,
when you
or-
get to
or
the
even-
industry,
Yes,
so that is considered as an experience.
exactly. Yes.
I think it is considered as experience. The way I did it when I was at your position, I exactly enumerated that. In this lab, I did research and basically put exactly what work that you did, what contribution you did in terms of keywords. That's what hiring managers look for. in terms of if there is a formula that 2 years of experience translates into level X versus level Y, I don't know if maybe big companies have that, I don't know, or maybe government has that. In small businesses that we are, that's very, very nebulous. And so basically it doesn't translate, like there's no one-on-one mapping, if you will. In general, yes, that makes the resume better. But you can't go to HR and say, hey, I had 3 years of experience, hence I have to be in this level.
My experience is that as an RA, as a graduate student, I think publication is something tell how valuable you are. If you are able to publish your work in top journals in your area, that definitely make you stand out. For example, when I was in graduate school, my advisor told me that if I can, because I'm in the catalysis, so he told me that if I can publish 4 papers in Journal of Catalysis, which is the #1 journal in chemical engineering at that time, then you are equivalent to the graduate from Stanford. Yeah, because in catalysis, people like to go to join those big companies like ExxonMobil. So, and that is how they rate how good you are. So that's one way to jump to the, you know.
I was just going to say in government, in almost every position I've ever seen, there's an education and experience equivalency. I don't know exactly how they work the math on that in terms of how many years equate to what, but there is a trade-off there, and they can take that into consideration.
So I'm going to take advantage of my position. I'm going to ask a question. And it's actually one that I think the students had asked, but I kind of was quite interested in it. And, you represent kind of various, parts of public and private sector. We're talking about STEM degrees and STEM graduate degrees. In your experience, kind of, is there value? If there is, how valuable are courses or sort of some kind of experience during your graduate studies around business in one way or another? How valuable is that?
I can answer partially. For chemical engineering, because I'm only familiar with chemical engineering, actually undergraduate have to take an economic class in engineering. So we already have some sort of fundamental understanding of economics. So obviously, the more you learn, the better, right? So if you can take some business classes, yeah, no hurt. Yeah. I just want to add one thing outside of this question is that we talk about PhD degrees. Sometimes I have to say that PhD degrees is not enough. So some organization actually want you to have a postdoc too.
So, I mean, it definitely helps. The question is, how much does it help? Yeah, I think general business class, there are all sorts of ones that will give you a mental framework for how to think of startups. I think you could read a couple books and probably get the same mental framework. It helps. It doesn't hurt. There are also some narrow skills like stuff I don't like, accounting and forecasting and all this stuff. And I'm learning a little bit because we're a very small company, so I kind of have my hands in everything. Those are skills that you can pick up. But I think for this, more than anything else, is you learn by doing. And you will learn a lot, by doing. You can read tons of books, and prepare for interviews, I read, hundreds of pages on product management. But the first time you have to roll a product out to market and work with documentation and sales and marketing and all that, take a class, it's helpful. I don't think taking that class won't make you an automatic success.
Mm-hmm. And the side effect of this is you're going to be in the same class with same-minded people. Maybe it helps with the networking aspect of it. So you can find, and maybe there's a spark somewhere.
Hi, I'm Jen Dulett. I'm in bioengineering, and you just mentioned that a postdoc might be helpful. So how useful is that? Like, if I want to go into industry, should I get a postdoc?
Industry, probably not, because a lot of industry just hire you as a regular staff. Postdoc, mostly academia, and also the national labs.
Yeah,
Thank you.
our company, no, you don't need a postdoc. Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be postdocs and recession were kind of correlated together. So I remember, back in early 90s, the universities, they were saying that application for postdoc has gone up so much, and that's because early 90s there was recession. So people not necessarily did postdoc for necessarily the work, but kind of waiting the time until they find the right job and expand their network. So from that perspective, it would help. But from our industry, I mean, I honestly don't see much value in what we do.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask one more
So
question?
I would just say for
Sorry.
for something like this, I would recommend just walking at a big career fair and talking to the companies you want. We may not know everything at this panel. We know a lot, but not everything. So really, just try it. And if you know you want to work in industry, then I would say take the path of least resistance. So if you don't need one, don't get one. If you
Yeah,
need a postdoc,
that's what I was hoping. Can I ask one more question?
Please.
So I worked before I came back and I'm getting a PhD. Do you think that experience is relevant, like when I'm looking for jobs, even if it's not in my field of research?
I would think your work experience, that you need to, depending on what you're applying for, what you're looking to do, you can find the connections from what your previous job experience was and putting those lines on your resume of how that, can influence the future position you're hoping to hold. Definitely it holds relevance, and you gotta find that relevancy and make that connection.
Thank you.
I'm actually a professor in electrical engineering, and a lot of students who want to do a PhD, they sometimes say, well, should they do a PhD right after a master's or bachelor's, or should they get that work experience that you were just talking about, work for a few years, then come back for a PhD? Do you guys have comments on which you recommend, or which pluses and minuses of either?
I think there's no right or wrong answer. It depends. Depends on individual situations. If you can afford, or you already identify what you want to do, the advisor or the research area, then you should, and you know that is what you want to do, then of course you go ahead. Just like myself, I know what I want to do, so I get everything done from same university in 7.5 years or less. So I think that can save you a lot of time. And also, the older you get, the less motivation you will have, and also will have more distraction, right? Especially if you have families and so on. So yeah, but there's no right or wrong answer. Yeah.
I took a semester off during my master's program, and I found the semester coming back to school was the hardest, because when you're in the grind of it all, you've got your system down, you know how to do it. And yes, it's difficult, but you've got it down. And, while I agree there's no right or wrong answer, I know it was difficult for me personally just to get back into the groove of it. And, had I to do it over again, I would see if I could find a way not to take that semester off, because it was hard getting back into it.
Yeah, my experience was similar. When I finished my research, my startup opportunity came up, so I took a sabbatical from school, knowing that, okay, within I can't remember what, but I had 12 months or 24 months until I finished my dissertation. So I said, okay, I'll take that time off and I'll do my dissertation along. Hardest thing ever to do, because every night or every weekend I had to reboot myself completely from the startup environment and the work I'm doing to think about where was I in the other one. Very hard. I don't recommend it at all. Finishing degree first, then working. So,
Well, let's see if we can take one more question, and then I'm going to offer you a practical opportunity.
Hello, my name is Iker, and I have a bachelor's degree in geophysical engineering from Colorado School of Mines. So, but I immediately took a job with the city of Denver. I work for the public library, teaching technology. So it's really not the field that I study. So I am now in a position where starting a master's program with the civil engineering department. I want to break into the field, so I'm breaking into the field. And I'm a little bit on the opposite of what I've heard right now from your experiences, that you really seem to know exactly what you want to study. What inspired you, kind of like just looking around into just like, oh, that would be a good research?
So I guess I recommend informational interviews. So how I took your question is I'm in an ambiguous situation right now, and I want to figure out where to go next. And how do I find a research topic? How do I find if this career will be valuable? How would I end up in a given career? So this is kind of a research problem on your end. And so start doing research. And the tool I have found is just you meet someone interesting, or you meet someone you want to connect with, say, hey, can I have coffee with you?
Okay.
And so informal, don't approach it necessarily with I'm trying to get a job.
Right.
But literally just an informal, open-ended, relaxed interview where you're kind of interviewing them and you don't really have an agenda.
This is good advice.
I could tell you something I wish I had done in grad school. I somehow just got lucky and ended up with a great job, but I wish I had asked the current set of kind of senior graduate students what they were planning to do, and maybe ask the professors even, where have your recent successful graduate students gone on to get jobs?
Right.
And kind of, approached it that way. Yeah, so I wish I'd done that back then.
Good advice.
Yeah, just have something to add. Actually, before I came here, during a weekend, I spent half an hour to dig out one book that I bought at that time in the 90s. It's called Getting What You Came For. And this book had a lot of good information. And actually, I just checked the Amazon. They still have this book.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I'll check
But
it out.
it can answer a lot of graduate students how to pick advisor, what they need to prepare for themselves, and so on. Yeah.
Awesome. Can you repeat the title again?
Getting What You Came For.
I guess one other thought would be, like Praj was saying, in terms of networking and really talking, is also talking to your faculty. Your faculty probably have some research topics that they just need the right student for.
Right.
And talk to your faculty and see, what they have going on. And if it sparks an interest, it might be the right project for you.
Awesome.
Well, fantastic. Thank you kind of very much. And I think we're kind of coming to the end kind of our session. And so I'd like to kind of wrap up with a couple of comments. And I'd like to start by thanking our panelists for just an incredible kind of time and wonderful insights this evening to the kind of audience. I think you received an absolute gold mine of sort of valuable advice. I heard over and over, and we all sort of hear things through our own lens, but I kind of heard three things that really struck me and I was, impressed by, and none of them were technical. I heard a lot about tenacity and grit. I heard about passion, and I heard about sort of the personal growth that came kind of during kind of our panelists' graduate studies. And I think that's just really fantastic kind of advice that they've shared and that you've had the experience kind of to with. So can you please join me in thanking kind of our panelists? I'd very much like to kind of thank our student group. So could everybody please put their hands together to thank them for their initiative and their thoughtfulness. Very, very well done. We'd like to thank the team from Wilo Epicure Catering that kind of put together a kind of wonderful meal for us tonight. The folks from the CU Denver kind of audio-visual team. I think we were all quite nervous when we walked in and saw the quality and of the production that was going to happen, and we were all kind of spiffing up a little more than we might have otherwise. Our staff in the College of Engineering, Design, and Computing kind of did a fantastic job, and a couple of them are here. Tammy Hassan, I see over here, and Kenny Cisco helped us kind of tremendously with the AV and kind of getting everything set up. I think that our students kind of instigated and put all, kind of got us this all teed up. There's sort of 3 faculty in electrical engineering that kind of helped them figure out kind of which way to swing the club and which way to hit the ball to get this going. And I'm really grateful for Mark Golkowski, Vijay Harid, and Tim Lee for kind of helping the students kind of on their way with this. And I'm very grateful to Keith Jones, kind of our Associate Dean for Academic Initiatives, for his efforts to kind of help with this. So please join me in thanking all of them. Yeah. And finally, I'd kind of like to thank kind of all of you in the audience tonight. I'm going to offer you a little bit of a practicum. The other word I heard a lot of tonight was networking. And so I think our panelists are kind of willing to probably network with you a little bit, and our faculty as well, kind of as we turn off the cameras and stuff. So again, thank you for a wonderful evening. Let's put our hands together and kind of thank our panelists again. All right. Thank you.